Hello, Dr. Janette Moreno. Welcome back to the Nurse Leader Debrief. I'm so glad that we get a chance to talk again. How are you?
I am well, and thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity to be in conversation with you and the rest of your audiences.
Absolutely. I appreciate your patience after some technical difficulties last time. So
It happens, it
it
happens.
happens. It happens. And I appreciate you so much. So I think we'll just jump right in if that works for you. I know we've gotten to spend some time together over the past year, and I always learn from you. And I think you just have such an inspiring story that I'd love for you to just start from your first experiences in the United States, and then we'll go from there.
For sure. Thank you so much, Amy. It's so wonderful to meet amazing leaders like you. And this opportunity to share my story as a story of any leader or any nurse, particularly immigrant nurses coming in to work in a foreign land. That was May of 2002 when I first migrated here in the US from the Philippines, arriving to a crowd of reporters in San Francisco International Airport, and we were like treated like stars. There was 5 of us hired directly from the Philippines, and the following day we were met by more reporters from different NBC and Cron TV, and they were following us and chronicling our experience,
Oh,
even
wow.
up to opening our first bank account for our paycheck. um, so it was so much fun. I said, wow, this is how welcoming the Americans are to us foreign born and foreign educated nurses. That's amazing. And then about 8 to 10 days later, I was working PM shifts, 3 to 11. I received a call around noon from the charge nurse saying that I'm canceled. I said, what does that mean? I'm still in orientation. I said, well, you don't have to report to work today. Okay, great. Let me go see the Golden Gate Bridge because I haven't done my touristy stuff. First
Right.
time in the US. So then the following day, I received another call and they said, I'm canceled again. Okay, that's great. What do I do? Well, maybe I'll go shopping in Square in San Francisco. The third day, it wasn't fun anymore. I said, what's going on?
Right.
What's going on? And then they said, well, the nurses gave us a 10-day strike notice. And I don't know what that really meant, Amy. And then they
Right.
said that the nurses with the least experience are being canceled because we cannot afford the 10-day strike if nurses go on strike.
Oh,
I
wow.
live, yeah, I live by the Mission District. So the nearest library, San Francisco Library, was by the BART station in 24th Street. I went there because, I am a curious child and I say, what is going on in America? 8 days ago, 10 days ago, we were being celebrated like stars and being welcomed. And now we are being canceled to work. We have not received our first paycheck. I don't have a credit history. I don't have any employment history for me to even look for a job. And I don't know anyone. Most of my relatives are in the East Coast. What I found out is I found out about the union. And then I found out that I'm a union nurse. I didn't even know. Okay.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So HR told me to talk to the union representative because they were the one who put the 10-day strike. And the union told me, well, you're not part of the union yet because you're less than 30 days. So you're technically
Oh, no.
not part of the contract. You have to go to the people who hired you. So back and forth between HR and union, HR and union. So then, okay, what do I do now? The curiosity in me brought me back to the library and say, what is going on? What did I sign up for as a registered nurse in California? And then I discovered the Nursing Practice Act. I discovered tons of information about a union environment. And of course, my rights and as an immigrant, employer based, directly hired from my country. So the next call I made was to HR, and nobody really wanted talk to me anymore. And I said, okay, if no one is going to talk to me, the next phone call that I'm going to make is through the Immigration and Naturalization Services, because my employer, who directly hired me from my country, signed a financial support that they're able to financially and they're capable to support me here in the US. So then the following day, we were offered a job in our sister hospital.
Okay.
Amy, my story of resilience, survival, and I mentioned a lot about curiosity because that's part of my core values. Arming myself, educating myself, being curious,
Right.
and being persistent. I think really has brought me to where I am in terms of really advocating for myself and
Right.
advocating for the rest of the immigrant nurses who were along with me affected as well. So I love telling that story because uh, uh, because we all have our own beautiful stories and similar experiences to share as well. But finding our voices, particularly as nurses, is very important to advocate not just for ourselves, but to advocate for our patients as well.
Right. I was going to ask you how the other 4 were. How engaged were they? Were you kind of leading the group? Was everybody really engaged?
I laugh because they were so scared. So
I'll
scared.
bet. I'll bet.
Okay, so they were so scared. We were in a foreign country. It's our first time living outside of of the Philippines,
Yeah.
and our culture, the Filipino culture, is all about silence and shyness. It's
Hmm.
all about our parents, have enculturated us the value of service and just be quiet and just serve and be respectful. Because the moment you start to question, and that's, I'm not actually saying questioning, you start to be curious and you start to ask question, that's actually the opposite of shyness. So uh, shyness in the Philippines is called hiya, and a lot of people say, okay, fine, I could be walang hiya. And walang hiya is, if you look at it, the meaning of it, and if you talk to your Filipino friends and colleagues, they will laugh at you. It's okay that they call me no shy, no shyness in me, because I will open my mind and advocate for myself and advocate for you and advocate for what I believe in,
Yeah.
within the community.
Right. Absolutely. What a great story and a great thing. And I wonder about, what the majority of our listeners, I believe, are frontline leaders right now. Do you have any, and clearly we still have a large number of nurses coming from overseas and variety of countries.
Mhm.
What is any sort of uh, guidance or tips as to how? I know you can speak of your experience, and I know you're very engaged in the Filipino Nurses Association.
Mhm.
And um, any particular tips you might have for helping our international nurses who come to feel that welcome that you initially felt from all the paparazzi,
Yeah.
but in
Yeah.
our work environments?
Really, really great point. Our nurse leaders, I always invite them to embrace curiosity. All of us, particularly. So there's about 20% Filipino nurses, among the 4.5 million nurses
Mm.
across the nation. In California alone,
Wow.
right? There's about more than 100,000 Filipino nurses.
Wow.
And statistically, the Filipino nurses comprise of those that are immigrants,
Hmm.
are similar to me. Where the culture of shyness that I'd like to address that needs to be a transparent conversation might impact, of course, nurses being leaders at the front lines. Because
Hmm.
Amy, in our professional role as nurses, if we don't want to lead, there is really no room for you in nursing.
Right.
Because at 2 o'clock in the morning, when a patient starts showing subtle changes, we as nurses, front lines, are the most powerful person in the room. It's
Mhm.
either we choose to do something about it or ignore it, and we have that power. And if we don't open up and start being curious and start communicating and start advocating and start bringing the resources in the room, the charge nurse, the physician, the respiratory therapist, then patient safety is at risk, right?
Yes.
So the voice of nursing at the bedside and the development and the skills and competencies of our frontline liners as leaders, we need to advocate. We need to
Yes.
be able to find ways to develop, interpersonal communications, coordination, collaboration, and really focus on those skills rather than all the technical skills of
Right.
checklists after checklists on how to insert IV, how to insert CARI, how to insert a
Agree.
Foley catheter, and really focus on that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've recently been doing a lot of work, and I've heard a couple of leaders and colleagues reference this, but we've got a lot of C words going on. But I have recently done a presentation about professional nurse well being and our professional identity that actually encompassed and kind of wove in curiosity, compassion, and courage
I love
as
that.
being three fundamental competencies and skills that we don't often talk about actually in terms of that. And I think of it in terms of human connection and curiosity by way of preventing like a bias. I mean, if you think about it, all the way back to Peplau's theory that it became the therapeutic nurse patient relationship. That's not the exact wording of it, but that's what we talk about. The very first step in developing a therapeutic nurse patient relationship is to set aside your preconceptions.
So true.
And I put that with a preconception being a bias, regardless of what type we're talking about. A
Mm.
preconception is akin to a bias, and the only way that I can think of to overcome bias in the short term is not only bringing it to your conscious awareness, but also you have to combat it with curiosity. Don't you think? I mean, you have to start to say, what do I actually know? What don't I know here? So even it can be a clinical situation. Think about like the terminology that we use that has just been normalized, referring to somebody as a frequent flyer or a drug seeker or those types of things, and
Mhm.
what that does, how that impacts our curiosity towards developing relationship with them, treating them, and advocating for them.
I really love that insights, Amy, around curiosity. I always refer to curiosity as kindness. It just equates to kindness.
Mm.
Um, being curious and trying to really go beyond understanding. There is this terminology, I don't know if you've heard about it, inner standing. Have you heard about that?
No, no, tell
I
me about it.
have been going deeper into that, understanding. There is a human potential coach named Kamini on LinkedIn that I stumbled upon. And she says that understanding is about the deep, intuitive understanding, initially first of ourselves, so we can better understand others and their experiences. It's more than just understanding, it's really going deeper into awareness of our own
Mm.
emotions, our own truths, our own motivations, a deeper level of understanding that comes from internal, our internal perspective. And then, you know, if then we will have to have, as leaders or as human beings, establish a deeper connection with our own experiences.
Mm.
And as soon as we truly have that deeper understanding of our own inner self, that is the only way that we can open up room for a lot of curiosity, that we can
Right.
open up, yes, and that we can embrace. We basically remove our focus on the inner critique and focus on the inner coach within us.
Oh, wow. That's powerful. That's powerful because it all
Yeah.
just it makes so much sense. I feel like we spend so much time defending ourselves for whatever reason. It makes sense, right? I mean, we want to make sure that we are seen well and everything, but we don't always spend that time. I love that understanding.
Yeah,
I'm gonna try to connect with that person as well
that's
and learn a
right.
little bit more.
So, understanding, if we were to talk about that as a very powerful leadership, and Dr. Gene Watson actually kind of like want to stay away from the word competency and really want to focus
Mm.
to characters literacy.
Ah,
Understanding is really aligned with the first caritas process, which is the practice of loving kindness. The
mm,
practice of loving kindness, I refer to it as three components. It's about self acceptance.
mm,
I am enough. At the end of the day,
yeah.
I may not have checked off 20 on my lists to do today. I may have completed only 10, but guess what? I am enough. I am enough.
Mm.
I did my best. Number two is self compassion. Self compassion is really about grace and honoring imperfection, that I forgive myself for imperfection. It's all about progress and not perfection.
Right.
And the last piece, I think, the hardest one, I say, is self love. Self
Yeah.
love and looking at it in a positive lens and finding that inner beauty from within, that inner beautiful self. And the only way it will evolve to that is inner standing through truly being aware of our deeper connection with ourselves.
I think that it's just also powerful. I have so many things going through my head and questions like, oftentimes when you speak and you mentioned this, our task lists and those types of things, and particularly for these frontline leaders that we're trying to impact here, it's easy to put ourselves last, right? That is
Yeah.
just the kind of thing. And then we think about, I still hear it today and it drives me crazy, is referring to some of the things we're talking about as maybe soft, the all of the I mean, and there's scientific hard evidence around all of this, right? And around the Caritas framework and literacy, as you were saying, and I learned that today just from you. Thank you. There's so much about it's so critical to all of the things that we're
Hmm.
trying to accomplish, whether it's relationship, advocacy, clinical care. The more we can kind of look into ourselves, the
Hmm.
hate to say better, but the more equipped, I guess, we are to
Hmm.
serve outside of ourselves, which is
Hmm.
the whole point, right?
So true. So true. Um, I know we're very short in time, Amy, but there's one more concept I think that's so well aligned with this.
Please, please.
And the concept of sacred activism,
Ah,
where I'm gonna kind of like weave in that level of curiosity that we have for another person is only gonna, shine brightly and shed light if from within we've embraced our own inner beautiful self, inner standing, and that curiosity, about another person and being able to embrace them as human beings and truly connect with them will then translate to a lot of the connection that we have with the environment around us, with the community around us, and take the courage to really just spread kindness and love amongst all human being. And I'm really talking around, that would combat social injustices, right?
Right.
As you said, the connection of our biases, and discriminatory thoughts, and sometimes a lot of our expectations as to what the standards are. It
Right.
it actually all translates to that. And sacred activism is a work by Andrew Harvey that I have been following, and Jean just released her new book and has a chapter on sacred activism. It's truly going to that. And if you know Bhutan, which is in Southeast Asia, they don't
Mm.
base their economy on gross domestic product, GDP. They base it on gross national happiness.
Huh.
They're the poorest of the poor country, but they created 11 metrics to measure. Yeah, you're poor, but do you have a family who supports you? Check. Do you
Mm.
have things that are making you happy every day? Check. So it's fascinating to watch. It's fascinating because this is beyond us. It will start with us as leaders, but it's
Right.
not about us.
Absolutely agree with that as well. And there's just so many things that I think that we do a little bit of an injustice from time to time. If we look at this is clearly uh like deep, the sacred activism and all of those things that you're talking about. I need to
Mhm.
learn more about, and we can find at least hints of this being an actual obligation. Not, I hate to say obligation to mean like forceful in a bad way, but this is what professional nursing is.
Very
If you
true.
read through our foundational documents, the code of ethics, our scopes and standards, our
Mhm.
social policy statement, this is what it's about. We start to think, and you said you read your Nurse Practice Act. I think we're probably two of, a very few collective people that read their Nurse Practice Act. But I have read all nine in the 9 states that I have lived in. And I have yet to see specific tactics and skills really outlined in there, right? What is outlined is an understanding of and an expectation that we align with and execute and embody the code of ethics, the what it means to be a professional nurse, our scopes and standards, all of those things that come down to that we are supposed to be advocating for people. Social justice is written right into those documents. Treating all with courtesy, respect, and dignity. And what we're
Mhm.
talking about is people and scientists that have taken this to a much deeper understanding as we continue to struggle with not just, I mean, today, I don't, with this will air later, but today is election day. I just came from the
Mhm.
polls,
Yeah.
and if there's just so much unrest and lack of curiosity, I
Mhm.
guess,
Mhm.
all around us, that I do really feel like, of all people, this is what nursing was founded on,
Yeah.
an ability to understand, assess, learn, be curious, and provide kindness, compassion to those that we serve, right? And who better than us as leaders to
So true.
continue this message going forward.
So true. I've been a faculty with the Association of California Nurse Leaders on their Foundations for Leadership workshop. And my
Mm,
topic is on professional practice, upholding professional practice and advancing professionalism in nursing. And at the end of the day, our scopes and standards of practice and code of ethics as to how Dr. Maria O'Rourke was stated is the lyrics to the song of our profession. But the
yes,
moment we get into healthcare, Amy, all we have are accreditations and regulatory and compliance standards that are not nursing driven, but are HR driven, maybe union driven, compliance driven, that we gravitate to. So now
right,
healthcare and nursing is all about checklists and
right,
compliance and
right,
competencies, when in fact, If we sing the same lyrics to the song over and over consistently, we know that we could truly uphold our own professional role identity. So
Yes.
we need more singers, Amy. You, me, and we
Yeah.
need a choir.
We'll take volunteers from our listeners as well to join the choir. We'll have to think about what we'll call ourselves. But I fully agree. Love Dr. O'Rourke,
Sure.
and clearly, yeah, that is a beautiful way to say that. And I think about one of my favorite examples of just how far away we get from the why with all of the regulations and all
Mhm.
of the audits and all of the things
Mhm.
is hand washing. I cannot tell you how many times I have heard it articulated that we need to wash our hands for our leapfrog scores, for Joint Commission requires it. It's a regulation, et cetera, et cetera. It's a national patient safety goal, which again, we could talk about why it's been one for 50 years or whatever, but which is far too long. But I'm like, is that really why we wash our hands? I mean, it isn't why we wash our hands, but we as leaders have to think about that. The more we articulate it that way, because it has become even a checklist versus an infection prevention standpoint versus a safety measure
Yeah.
and just a simple hygiene measure, which Florence knew about way long ago, and her colleagues that were working and all nurses in that era providing
Yeah.
nursing care, right? Everybody knew that, but we
Mhm.
still can't quite grasp it because now we almost are defiant because we think it's a regulation. And it's just, again, it's a
Mhm.
simple way of kind of thinking of it that just maybe we can laugh at ourselves a little bit for.
Yeah. So true. And
Yeah.
right now, looking at Jean's chapter in sacred activism, I could truly connect that. She says that the denial of the human spirit connection beyond the physical world, because all of this, right? Hand washing for regulatory intentions and regulatory accreditation compliance purposes
Yeah.
can lead to unintentional disregard of our fullest and richest expression of the human experience when
Mm,
providing care. Uh, we see many nurses embracing and validating, you know, the spiritual care of our patients whom we provide, and then we awaken to that sacredness and the noble, profession that we have, and the realization that we can engage in small or grand ways for how we advocate for our patient. I
mm,
wash my hands because I'm advocating for my patient's quality of life versus
right.
increasing the length of stay in this. Or I'd rather this patient go home to their family where love, is abundant. Love
Right.
and caring is abundant. That kind of connection we'd like to be able to make
Mm.
sense
Yeah.
for within our profession.
Oh man, this is all so good, and I don't know that this is where we intended the conversation to go, but I'm so glad that it did because what a beautiful and I hope meaningful kind of conversation we're having for our listeners. And I know it's been meaningful and impactful for me, and that's enough, right? Like as you mentioned, we're just trying to impact one person at a time, and so thank you for all of that. I know you also have made a very significant contribution, at least to my life, and I know to the lives of many, with your book that you published earlier this year regarding haikus. Can you share a little bit about the book, and then, if you wouldn't mind closing us out, and anything else you'd like to say first, and then if you wouldn't mind closing us out with one of your haikus, I would be honored.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Amy. You were saying earlier about technical difficulties, and it's so true that human beings, just like all of our technology, when we reboot and reset and restart, it truly works. And that's
Mm,
what probably I did earlier this year in 2024. I stepped back, I reflected, and I unplugged myself and went on a caring healing journey. And through that, I actually started writing a book, and it's called Human Caring Through Healing Haiku.
Awesome.
It's part of my journey of inner standing, really truly looking into and reflecting, and part of a couple of those that I'd like to share with the listeners is that being more aware of my internal experiences through mindful practice, journaling, and self compassion. It's very important. So the book is actually have my favorite quotes from Dr. Jean Watson, and I
Hmm.
have suggested micro practice that I'm hoping could create a shift every day, because the most important time in this planet Earth for us is the now, this moment.
Yeah.
Yesterday and a few minutes ago has gone by, it has passed. Tomorrow is not promised. All we could do is hope and dream and be
Mm.
inspired. But the moment that is most important is the now. So I usually just randomly open the page and wherever it lands, it resonates. So I just want to, sorry, I landed on page 21. Oh my God. Amy, you can't believe this. And this is a quote from Gene Watson in the Now Focus.
Oh.
When the nurse or healthcare provider is able to enter into and stay within the other person's frame of reference, the care that is offered becomes more accurate, more focused, more appropriate, and generally more fulfilling for both the nurse and the patient. It can be healing, life receiving, and life giving.
Mm.
My God, isn't that beautiful?
Whoa. Yeah, it is beautiful and so aligned with what we were talking about.
So aligned. And the haiku that I wrote in alignment with this quote is life giving and life receiving. In this given now moment, I am here for you.
Oh, wow. What a special moment for me and for us and for our listeners, Jeanette. Thank you so much for sharing that and for sharing your wisdom and just vulnerability with us as well. And my hope is that many of our listeners are impacted and take them something forward to be curious. That's what we know we are really supposed to be, and really to seek out, even be curious about professional nursing and all of the things that we've talked about
Yeah,
and mentioned here. Go look things up and find out for yourselves some of this and really um, start with an inner standing. I think that's a
that's so
great way
true.
to end our time together. Jeanette, thank you so much. I know I'll have you on again. I'm really, really grateful for our friendship and for your time today. And you be well.
Thank you. You too. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you for yours. Bye bye.